Hi, welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman, and today we are going to be working on block number 2 of our Friendship Bouquet block of the month. I have finished one of mine. I'm actually working on 2 of them for you, but here is one. This is sort of the spring colorway, if you will. And the rose applique blocks are what we're going to be working on today. Those of you who have registered for the class, and there's a link below if you would like to register, you can register at any time and just catch up and do this at your own pace. But there is a PDF for you that you would have received if you're a registered student, along with some templates that you would have received in your email this past Wednesday. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is fusible applique. That's the technique that we're going to use for this rose applique. And it's for this beautiful quilt. If you haven't seen the quilt, that is it. It's just a beautiful medallion quilt. I am making it in the spring colorway as well as in the fall colorway. And when I get to the tabletop here, you'll get to see all of that for yourself. And now let's go ahead and get to the tabletop so we can get started. So as you see here, these are the 2 colorways that I am using. This is the spring, which I've just completed for you on block number 2. Number 1 and 2 are done now. That's on the wall that you just saw. And this is one that I'm also working on, and this is the fall colorway. And I'll be sharing with you how to do this applique and how to get your blocks cut and so forth using the fall colorway. And basically, let's just kind of go through the PDF here. It does always give you the fabric requirements, so every PDF that you'll receive will have that. And what you'll be cutting to get started here for your background are a total of 4 13.5-inch squares. And you're going to take those squares and you're going to cut them on the diagonal once. So here are a couple of those squares. They were 13.5. That's what I measured them out. I cut strip with the fabric strips at 13.5 inches, and then I subcut them into squares, and then I've simply cut them on the diagonal. And then what you're doing with those, you'll do that 4 times, you'll end up with 8 of these triangles, and you're going to make a larger triangle. This is the triangle that we're going to be appliquing onto. So you're simply going to take each of those triangles that you've cut, and you're going to line them up so that they create a larger triangle, and you'll put them right sides together, and you're going to sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance to create a total of 4 of these. And you'll see that what I did was I simply pressed my seam allowance open. I pressed it flat and it's open, and that will just help with bulk as we are appliquing. So as a quick review, I have got, I cut 4 of these 13.5-inch squares, and I'm going to take each of the 4 squares and I'm going to cut it on the diagonal. I need to get a larger ruler to reach from here to here. Hold on just a minute, I'll be right back. All right, this ruler is going to reach from corner to corner. So I'm out here. I'm going to make sure that you can see all of this in the screen. So my 13.5-inch square is right here. I am going to lay this ruler corner to corner on the diagonal and make a cut. And I will do that to all 4 squares, and I'll end up with a total of 8 of these smaller triangles. And then we're putting them together like this to create a larger triangle that we will use to square up this medallion here. So I'm simply putting them together. Then I will sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance here. I've already done it on this one. I've already pinned these. I will sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance, and again a 1/4-inch seam allowance. And then I will have my 4 large triangles that will all end up looking like this. And again, I did press my seam allowances open so they're nice and flat. For those of you who have registered for the class, you would have also received a PDF of the elements that we're going to trace for our applique. And if for some reason you did not get the PDF, the templates, and a PDF of instructions, email me, let me know, and I'll make sure you get those, but they had gone out on Wednesday. Every one of these elements needs to be traced onto your fusible paper-backed fuse 4 times. So each element needs to be traced 4 times because we are making 4 of these triangle blocks, if you will. So 4 of these rose appliques are going to be put on here. And the neat thing about the seam allowance that's coming down the center here of this triangle is that it is going to act as your guide when you are placing everything on here. And so you're going to go ahead and trace all of this. When you're tracing your elements onto the paperback fuse, use the solid lines, that dark solid line. Ignore the dotted line unless you plan to use needle turn. If you plan to do applique, which is a needle turn applique, then you will need that 1/4 inch seam allowance when you cut out your elements. And then of course you're not going to be using a fusible applique at that point. But otherwise, for anyone who's using the fusible applique, which is what I'm teaching in this class, you will trace on the solid line. So I traced all of these little blue leaves, and I've written on there blue. I've traced them all together. There's 4 each of these, all grouped together so that I can conserve my fusible applique as well as the fabric on which I'm going to be pressing this. I like to try and be as efficient as I can when I'm doing my applique. The fusible or paper-backed fusible that I like to use, I have a flexi fuse here and I have a soft fuse. I'll try and remember to link these out in the description box below for you. But I have them on rolls, so I have plenty to be able to use. And it's just a very nice, light fusible so that it's not affecting the applique. I love that. I don't like a very hard, you probably experienced that before when you've put a fusible applique on the back of your fabrics, and then as you're trying to applique it on your machine, there's so much goo that it's trying to get through that it's difficult to actually stitch and applique on your machine. So I do like to use either soft fuse or flexi fuse. Those are 2 of my favorites right now, so I'll link those just in the description box for you. But basically what I'm going to do, I will cut a chunk of this off so that I'm not having to deal with the whole roll, but I'm going to cut a chunk of this off, and then I am going to lay it paper side down, or excuse me, fuse side down on the elements, and I'm going to trace those elements. And again, because I am doing a fusible applique, I am tracing on the dark solid line. Hopefully I can do this fairly decently for you while I'm on camera. But I would trace 4 of number A, and according to the key, number A, I believe, is going to be the dark pink. Actually, I didn't read that right. It's not A, it's V. So V is going to be my light pink. What's probably going to help you is go through all of these elements on your templates. And I never, ever cut these from the paper. I make sure these my templates always remain intact, and I always trace over the paper. That way this is always available to you. You do not have to cut these apart at all. You're going to cut the fusible, not the paper PDFs. But you might want to go through and just pencil in, and you definitely want to do it by pencil because the next time you make this quilt you might be using different colors. But color in the pencil in the colors. I'm going to try and write this upside down. Let's see how I do. So this one is going to be my light pink. This one would be the darker pink. This one would also be the dark pink. These vines here are going to be green. That A is going to be a green. This one's going to be a green. A lot of these smaller ones and the leaves were going to be blue. Some of these tiny little pieces here are going to be yellow because they're going to be the little center pieces in the flowers. So go through and pencil in the colors of all of this. And then when you're doing your tracing, you can trace all of that in groupings. So like all of my light pinks, I'm going to put right here. Those 4 flowers I'll trace right here. And then I'll trace 8 of the dark pink together. And then I will loosely cut out that grouping and take that grouping and place it on the back of the fabric that it corresponds to and press it to that fabric. have gone through and cut out or traced my dark pink F's and H's. I've got 4 H's, 4 F's kind of grouped together so that I can press those onto the back of the dark pink. In this case, it's going to be this fabric. From my other quilt, the one that you saw on the wall, I did use dark pink here. But for my fall quilt, the dark pink equates to this dark purple. So anything that says dark pink here for me is going to be fused to the back or the wrong side of my dark purple. And of course, substitute your colors for what you're using on your quilt. Obviously, you don't have to be using the same colors that I'm using. You can use different colors. So make sure that you substitute and then just transfer that information to your template. So here are my dark pinks. Here are my 4 light pinks, which I think what I'm going to do for my so-called light pinks, I'm going to use this fabric here. It's going to be kind of fun. So that's what I'm going to use for that. I've got a few of my blue leaves traced here, but I have a number of other things I need to continue working on. So I'm going to continue tracing. I'm going to do my green elements next. So that's the E, the A, the I, and the J. I need 4 of each of those for my 4 rows applique. So I'm going to trace those. I'm going to group them all together like I've done here so that I can, once I've finished tracing them, and allow yourself a little bit room between the elements so that you're not butting right up against the next tracing. And I'll do my green this way, and I'll also do my yellow. I'll just do every element that I need based upon this PDF of template pieces and the colors that I'm using. I have finished tracing 4 of each and every element so that I have enough for 4 of the rows appliques. And I've gone through and grouped them. And make sure when you trace that you're using the solid line, the dark line. Do not use the dotted line. That is for needle turn applique. But if you do plan to do needle turn applique, then yes, you do need that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So then you would want to trace on the dotted line. But for all of you who are using a fusible paper-backed interfacing or webbing, then that's what you're going to want to do is on the solid line. And so I have traced all of my elements that are going to be light pink, or in my case purple. These are the dark purple. I've traced all of those and loosely cut them out. This is everything that's going to be green. So these are the stems and the straight stem and the tiny stems. So all of that is going to be green, and I've loosely cut around it. And all of this is going to be blue. And I have taken advantage. I've had some tiny little pieces that I found in my stash of paper fuse. I went ahead and traced on those so that I can take advantage and use a lot of that excess that was laying around. So I'm using all of that. That's all going to be blue, and this is yellow. Everything on here will be yellow. So what I'm going to do now is take all of these templates that I have traced. I'm going to take it to the ironing board, and I'm going to press this to the wrong side of the appropriate fabric. So this will be pressed to the yellow. This will all be pressed to the blue, and I'll group it in nice groupings so that I'm conserving fabric. I want to be as efficient as possible. This one will be pressed on the back of the green, and then of course the purple. So I'll go do that, and I'll bring it back to the tabletop. I finished fusing all of my elements here. So the larger leaves I have fused to the wrong side of a darker blue fabric. The smaller leaves, I decided to fuse them onto a lighter blue fabric, which I used in the beginning of the quilt, and I'll show you that here in a moment. The tiny little centers of the flowers have been fused onto a gold, and it shows yellow in the PDF pattern. Here are my green stems. They're all fused to the back of my green fabric. This would be my light pink, which I've put on this bright purple. And here's my dark pink, which is on this dark purple fabric. So now I will simply take my scissors and cut out each and every one of these elements, and then I will get ready to place them on these triangles. I've cut out the elements for one of these triangles. I guess I have all 4 of them laying here. Hopefully that doesn't confuse you, but this top one here is the one that I'm going to lay this on. I really should be doing this on the iron so that everything is doesn't get moved before I press it. But what I want to do right now, I'm going to use this center seam on this triangle and start placing my green stems. So I've already removed the paper from that curved stem. And let me get rid of the paper here on this one. And I think I want the stem to go underneath the curved stem. And I'm bringing it down into the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And that stem is just laying right on top of that seam allowance underneath. And then this stem is going off each side here. And E and, let's see, what is this one? This one I believe is A. They're mirror image, so according to the key here on your PDF, they would go on the opposite sides, but they're identical. It's an asymmetrical design, so I'm simply going to put them on the opposite sides. And what I'm looking for is this slant here, and I want to place that under here. And you can place this anywhere along the stem that you'd like to. I'm putting it underneath. You could make more of these. You could make more of the leaves. You could make more of the flowers. Have fun with this. This is your quilt. Just really be creative. So I'm finding that little slant there, and I'm putting him right there, and I'm just kind of following along on my diagram. Now I'm going to put my darker flower buds down here. And where's the other one? Here's the other one right here. This one is going to go over here. I'm going to put these darker blue leaves underneath each of those outer flower buds. I'm going to place this one up here. I haven't taken the paper off yet. I've got to do that. There will be a blue flower or leaf that will go under that. And for these tiny little yellow pieces, I'm not worrying about which number goes where. You've got a big one and a little one, and they're all the yellow items. And you can see those on your key. And I'm just going to take a big one and a little one and just kind of put them together on each of these flowers. They represent the center, and you're not going to see it as well on this one anyway because there's some gold there. There are two other elements that are, according to the key, U would be over here, and I think it's L would be over here, but I'm going to reverse those. They're symmetrical, so I can certainly just put them on the opposite sides. I did not trace this mirror image. I just simply traced it because it is symmetrical. Okay, let's see here. And there is that one. Now we can put all of our little leaves in here, and these are the ones that I cut out of the light blue. And I need my one more blue over here. So there it is. I need to get it up to the ironing board and make sure everything is positioned exactly the way I want it. Make sure your stems are even. Maybe you need to move one of them down. But before you press this onto the fabric, make sure that everything is exactly the way that you want it, that it's the same distance from both sides. I can see here that this one is closer in, so I want to make some adjustments there. But I'm not going to worry about that until I get to this ironing board so that I can make all of the adjustments. Once it's exactly the way I'd like it, then I will press it. And if you'd rather add some more flowers, you could certainly do that. You could put another grouping of flowers here, maybe 3 of them up here. Have fun, be creative. So we are going to lay out 4 of these blocks just like this. And again, you can add more than what is on this template here. If you want to add more buds, if you want to add center buds, have fun with this. Really, just enjoy putting this together. Maybe you want to have more flowers in here or larger leaves. I did use a dark blue and then some lighter blue leaves in there. I've chosen my embroidery thread. This will be used for around the dark blue. This will be used around the light blue. This, of course, will be used around the green. This will be used around the purple, and this will be used around these little gold inside sets. And I will probably just use a straight stitch. You could use a zigzag, you could use a fancy stitch, you could use a blanket stitch, whatever you choose. Just set up your sewing machine with the thread that you want to use. Make sure that you've got the correct bobbin thread. I'm sure if you're familiar with your machine, you'll understand that sometimes you have to have a special bobbin thread depending on the thread that you're using on the top. But go ahead and get everything appliqued, get everything pressed onto your 4 blocks, just as I've done here. And once it's pressed and fused, it's permanent, obviously. Once it's fused, it's permanent. Then get everything appliqued, and then we're going to put these 4 blocks around our medallion and create a larger square medallion. I had finished this medallion center with blocks 1 and block 2 and showed that to you at the beginning of this tutorial. And here is one of the blocks sewn onto the side of the square. What you're going to do is sew opposite sides, and what I have done is matched up the center of this outside triangle with the center seam allowance and pin it on there, and it will extend beyond that center quilt, the center medallion, and that's fine. These have been cut a little extra large, but that's okay. We'd rather have more out here than not enough. So go ahead and do this. I've sewn this on the opposite sides. Then I've come to the last 2 sides that hadn't been sewn yet, and I attached the last 2 triangles to the medallion center, and I pressed it. Actually, I pressed everything toward the triangles. It just seemed to lay better. And then the square itself, you end up with a new medallion. Now it's a square medallion, and the center is on point. But it should be 34.5 inches by 34.5 inches across the center here and across the center here. Mine is actually larger than that, and that's okay. When we get to this quilt, I've allowed for variances in the size. I've got 2 different center borders in there. They're each 1 inch. They finish at 1 inch, but we'll cut them at 1.5 inches. But that will allow us the option, if we're too small or too large, we can either add or subtract one of those borders. So mine actually is 35.5 inches across, and that's going to be okay. I'm only going to use one of those inside borders when I get to that point. But if yours measures from here to here and from there to there at 34.5 inches, you are good to go. Thank you so much for joining me today on part 2 of our Friendship Bouquet new block of the month for 2023. I'm excited that you're here. I'm really enjoying making this. I'm going to continue working on my fall blocks. I've got 3 more of these to get finished, and I would love to see your applique triangles. So let me know if you're going to use a blanket stitch, if you're going to use a zigzag, a straight stitch. What are you going to use? I'd love to see it. Please post pictures of what you're doing out on my Facebook group page. It's Quilting with Lori, Scrap Up Your Stash, and I'll have links below. We'd love to see it. It would be an inspiration for all of us. So I'm going to get to work on finishing those 4 and get my fall quilt put together. In fact, here is the fall center, and so this is going to be going around this, all 4 sides. So I'm anxious to get this done and see it next time. Next month, we are going to be working on the picket fence borders, so that will be fun. I'm anxious to get to that and see what they look like. I have many new patterns that are coming out this fall and holiday season, so stay tuned. I have lots of wonderful tutorials out there for you, so enjoy, take some time and go peruse through my channel and see what's all out there. Check out the playlist. I teach you how to scrap up your stash. I have many tutorials on templates and on some of my patterns, just a number of things that are out there, so take a gander at what's all available for you. Please don't forget to share my videos with your friends and with your quilt guilds, and also don't forget to like and subscribe. That really does help my channel to get out to other viewers just like yourself. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you again later on this week with some more tutorials that I'll be posting. Until then, happy quilting.